Hi, my name's Starsky and welcome to From the Studio on Clubbing TV. In this episode, I'm going to take a look at a tiny replica of a massive classic. It's the Roland Boutique JD-08. And this is Roland's boutique version of their JD-800, which was their flagship synth back in the early 90s. It's a big, knobby interfaced digital synth, and it was used on countless dance tracks, and it was in pretty much every studio you ever came across, and that's why I did that 1990s classic there, Binary Finery. And if you're into your trance, listen to Matt Darey's remix of that, because it's a fabulous essence of trance distilled down into a beautiful 9 minutes. Anyway, this was so popular, or the JD-800 was so popular, because of all the knobs on it. If you look at what was there beforehand, we had lots of digital synths that looked a bit like this. This is the Roland D20. It's sort of a cut down version, a cheaper version of the Roland D50 that was on pretty much every track you ever heard back in the late 80s and early 90s. But if you look at this, the interface is absolutely rubbish. We've just got a parameter select buttons here, and then you change the value using this knob, or this one slider, a single slider for all these different values. And if you look at the front of the JD-8, you can see it's absolutely covered in sliders, and the original version had even more than this. So it was a huge step up being able to modulate your synth lines live. You could tweak those little filters on those bubbling arpeggios that turned into huge, great big trance lines without having to go in and sort of menu dive. Absolutely fabulous synth. It was all over the place, but it was digital, and this is what it sounds like. And by the way, this isn't a cabbage, it's just a plant, but it's getting in the way of you seeing the cat. So I'll move that out of the way so you can take center stage. And what you heard there was two patches playing two sequences simultaneously, one of the built-in presets actually, but it's a really good demonstration of how the synth works. On each patch, you've got 4 different layers. You can see these lights flashing here. And we've got patch A and we've got patch B. So if I play patch B, that's made up of 4 individual tones, each with its own oscillator, its own filter envelope, and its own amplifier, its own envelopes, its own LFO. So almost like 4 mini synths in every patch. So listening to them individually, And the little arpeggio line was the same. So if we go into part A, we've got the same. We've got 4 individual parts or tones. And that's why this was known as a fabulous pad machine. You can get really complex evolving textures from this because every key press can have 8 different tones playing. You've got layer A, layer B, and both those layers can have 4 each. So you can have 256 tones playing at the same time on this, which is fairly powerful. The original didn't have quite as many, but for this little box, not bad. Let's take a listen to some more. So yeah, 90s dance again, but most of the patches in here, most of the presets are a little bit naff, to be honest. When I very first heard this, I thought it sounded a little bit rubbish, to be honest. And if we listen to some more of the presets, could that sound any more like the 80s? In fact, this technology is still with Roland today. This PCM-based synthesis started off in the 80s with the D50 and the D20 that I showed earlier. And then it developed into the JD-08, that turned into the JV, or was the JD-990, a rack mount thing that then turned into or developed into the JV-1080, then the JV-28, then the XV-5080. This whole line of synths from Roland over the years have all been based around this because it's so flexible, and that's now on their Zenology Pro software, which is used in all their new kit. And this is really flexible because you can emulate all sorts of synths and all sorts of sounds with it. If we try and just do a really simple lead line or a simple bass tone, let's just load in an initial patch. Now let's stick a little bit of a filter on that. Whoa! You can hear straight away it doesn't sound like an analog synth, does it? It can sort of go a bit squelchy, but once you push it a little bit further, it just sounds awful. There you go. Whoa! So that's not nasty like in an analog synth sort of way. That's just plain horrible, isn't it? But you can, if you play around with it, do some decent stuff. It's 1991 technology. It's probably programmed back in 1990, so it's well over 30 years old. And you can hear it step in there as well, so really is rough and ready. But I think that's part of its charm. That's what makes it sound like an old 90s digital synth. Well, because that's what it is. We've got some effects on here as well. We've got distortions, phases, EQs, reverb, delay and chorus. Let's put the reverb on. It's okay, there's 10 different reverb types and they all sound very similar. Let's just go through them very quickly just to show. So it's a bit like you've got two main algorithm programs in there, maybe three. It's nothing like the Minilog XD or new synths where you get all these wondrous shimmers and submarines and all sorts of great big huge spaces. It's very much 1990s again. We've also got a sequencer and an arpeggiator, but I'm not going to go into that. Haven't got enough time. If you do want to see how they work, check out my Starsky Carr YouTube channel. I've got a lot deeper, in-depth look at this. So what are my final thoughts? Well, I think this is a really fun little synth. It doesn't sound like an analog synth. It doesn't sound like a new virtual analog synth. It sounds like a child of the 90s, because that's what it is, and it's got bags full of that sort of character. If that's what you're after, well, you can't go wrong with this. It's got a great little interface. The size of the knobs or the sliders doesn't bother me too much. It would be nice though if it had an editor so that you could see what was happening in your presets. If you think about one key press, you could have possibly 8 tones, and each of those 8 tones has got 3 envelopes, so that's 24 envelopes you're trying to work out where the little bit that doesn't sound quite right is coming from. Nice to have an editor to do that. But as I say, you know, all in all, £350 I think it is. Well worth checking out. And if you enjoyed that, don't forget you can catch it whenever you like on our Clubbing TV official YouTube channel on the From the Studio playlist. And if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments and I'll see what I can do to answer them. Also, as I said earlier, I've got a much longer in-depth review and demo of this on my Starsky Carr YouTube channel, so worth checking out that as well. So I will see you in the next episode of From the Studio.